Costco, they have only in the summertime with like coconuts
Oh
and
my god,
limes.
like the
and-
sorbet.
Yeah, the sorbets. I had that for my 6th birthday. And basically, I remember saying I got an outfit from Costco, and everybody asked me how old I was going to be, and I was 6 years old. But that's it. That's all I remember. But there's a lot more that happened.
But
But then like they.
are you certain there's a lot more that happened?
Ooh. Yes, the day there's 24 hours in the day. A lot did more happen.
Yeah, logically, but how do you know that?
I know
I think
that.
that's her point.
Sorry.
That is my point because I know it probably.
And
has
we're all in
details.
agreement.
Yeah.
See how great that is.
But
Wow.
but like if a big
Yeah.
event, like a car accident, you start saying different, so like, just say even because like the whole, what's the word, help me out here, you're in so much shock. You leave out details just from that, and then 3 weeks later when you're explaining it to someone, you're leaving out big details from the thing, and then you're starting to just use that story because it sounds good, or that's, you start saying the same story, and usually when you say a story, you start using it, and then you start leaving out a little bit of details from that story, and then it moves on, and
I just want to say, humans evolved to survive by being really, really good at remembering like patterns and things. So the way that we try and predict the future is by remembering that certain patterns have happened in the past. So even if it's not like our memory is perfect, we still have our like patterns that we've seen in the past, and we're trying to apply it. And
Yeah, that is true. Like, I guess the whole point behind this is our memories can't exactly be trusted 100% of the time, but to say that we can't predict cause and effect relationships because our memories are unreliable is kind of a bad statement considering that our memories aren't 100% unreliable.
Well, I have to defend David Hume in this regard. What he's trying to prove by this example, right, is not that we can't trust our expectations, or that we can't trust our memories. For the most part, he's a very practical person. His critique concerns those philosophers that think that they have demonstrated something absolutely.
Like Thomas Aquinas?
Or even Descartes, for example. I think, therefore I am. Therefore there's a res cogitans. How do you know? Because it's only from one moment to the next. Go ahead.
There was a study where it was like they would interview people talking about like something that happened in their life, right? And then like 5 years later, they would record, they would have the recording, and they would ask them questions from the recording, and they'd be like, no, that didn't happen.
Yeah, so like they change the story. And
And they were like, oh, we literally have a recording, and they'll play the recording, and they'll still disagree.
They either forget the memories,
There's
or
all
they
kinds of
create a new story, and that's the story they're building off of.
Yep.
there's all kinds of neat tests that show our memories can be messed with, and so on. Yes, go ahead.
So his main argument is that every other argument is not entirely true because nothing can be true because you can't entirely prove that it's true. It's only just somewhat sure. You can never be sure, but you can at least be certain.
So what happens is, from this point, at least from the point of view of those who understand what's going on in his argument, is science now doesn't speak of proof of something from experimental thing. We've proved such and such. No. Instead, they switch to the concept of a hypothesis. This is our best hypothesis for things. And we trust our hypotheses a lot. I mean, yeah, and they really work. I mean, if you think about it, look at all the technology and all the stuff, going on. That's just absolutely tremendous. Modern science is doing great. In a way, David Hume's argument really helps stimulate science, because if you think about it, the Industrial Revolution really takes off after he dies in 1776. It's a really easy date to remember because that was such a great year for Pinot Noir that everyone remembers it. 1776. Great year for Pinot Noir.
And for revolution.
could be a funny joke, because everybody, of course, remembers that 1776 is really famous for David Hume's death, yes. Somebody had something to say and I interrupted, but no, we're good at the moment?
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I did have a question though.
Go ahead.
Okay, so following his logic, when do you reach the level of certainty, or at least to a point where you're somewhat sure?
Well, as an empiricist, if that's our measure of certitude, then the only time you're certain about something is while you're having the perception of something. By the way, what this also means is while you're having a hallucination or a dream of something, really scary, wow, that's really real for you at that moment. And you wouldn't doubt that you're having that experience. Unless you also can back out of it, as you said, and realize, that was just a dream. I was really dreaming that, but I'm out of that dream now.
Then what if you can get back into it?
That's really powerful, I think, to be able to do that.
That's a lot of brain
I
power.
want to go back into the dreams. Those things are crazy.
Yeah, sometimes our dreams are just so much fun. When something wakes you up, you're like, I want to get back into the dream. It was
I can do that.
really amazing. I was teaching in front of a big class of people, and they were just absolutely, sitting on the edges of their seat, because I was so interesting. Great dream like that. Yeah.
So following this logic, for all the times that you have to get to a level of certainty, it's empirical, so it's hypothetical, you have to test it like over and over again. What do you do?
Well, the trouble, that becomes psychologically more and more persuasive. And I can say psychologically persuasive because I am psychologically persuaded. That's the way things are, But his point, against philosophers that think they've actually demonstrated absolute certitude is a good point. Remember we're going to talk about Kant on Wednesday, and Kant is a rationalist. Did you have something to say? Am I ignoring anybody? No. But Kant is a rationalist, a follower of Wolff, Christopher Wolff, I think his name was, who was a follower of Leibniz. So there's a tradition in Europe where Immanuel Kant in Königsberg is educator, studying the philosophy of the day. It's a rationalism, and he reads David Hume's book, and he famously wakes from his Wolffian slumbers. He's completely convinced of these rationalists and their philosophy, but he reads David Hume and he realizes, whoa, somebody has to answer Hume. And he basically spends the rest of his career trying to reconstruct philosophy as an answer to this problem that David Hume creates. As far as during David Hume's lifetime, nobody seemed to get it. He wrote this, he thought he was going to be famous, and as he famously said, the book fell dead-born from the press. Nobody read it, nobody got it. Actually, there were other people during his lifetime. Adam Smith, if you're familiar with Adam Smith from economics, he's kind of the inventor of economics in a way, was a good friend of David Hume. And in fact, the same artist that created Hume's tomb.
Oh, tomb. I thought you said tomb.
Hume's tomb. I actually love that.
You guys saw him?
Started to get that.
Oh, I'll use this one. Yeah, this is David.
Abraham Lincoln? That's what I'm.
That is Abraham Lincoln, and this is David Hume's tomb. This is in Edinburgh, on the hill. Actually, if you're you ever go to Edinburgh, you have to park, I don't know where the heck you're allowed to park. But once you get parked, you have to go all the way up the hill and then all the way down the hill in the cemetery to get to this spot. But yes, this is a statue dedicated to Abraham Lincoln, who was Scottish, by the way. And so the Scots take great pride in the fact that Abraham Lincoln is one of their own. And so there's a special memorial to him. And this is Hume's tomb.
They're so close
And the
to-
artist who basically, the architect who did this, also did a statue of Adam Smith that's famous. So they were interesting friends, and
You sound like falling on the stairs.
What?
You see that?
Always the people having a rough time.
There's something crying?
Yeah, like on the steps leading up to the
Cleverness.
Yeah.
this is a great book on their relationship, if you're interested in that kind of thing. The infidel is David Hume, and the professor was Adam Smith. David Hume wanted to become a professor at Edinburgh University, but the university was primarily a seminary for priests, and David Hume by then had admitted that he was an atheist. And generally speaking, to be a teacher at a seminary, you have to believe in God. And since he said, no, I don't believe in God, they thought, probably shouldn't be a teacher at the seminary, so they didn't hire him. Can you imagine that? But David Hume did eventually become the librarian for the Law University there. And eventually he became like a Secretary of State for the government for about 15 years. But what made him famous during his day, since most people didn't get his philosophy, was his History of England. He had a major, I think it was 3-volume work on the history of England. And even though it's not a famous read for today, because there's been a lot improvement on the understanding of the history of England, and there's better books to read, but it's still in the library. You can go and have a look at it. And it inspired Gibbon, who was a young man at the time, and Gibbon was the one who wrote a similar type of history, which he called The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. So you might have heard of that. That one is still pretty famous out there, even though it's also wrong about a lot of things. And if you're going to read about Roman history, you really should read Mary Beard. Mary Beard. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she's kind of the current best historian of the Roman Empire. So David Hume, where am I with him? Okay, so what kind of implications come from his problems that he presents us? Perceptions follow Locke, right? So he's pretty much following Locke and Berkeley. That's where that comes from. Lively impressions are the ones that we're having right now, by the way. And if I'm going to think about my mom, I can picture my mom and even picture her voice, and she's talking to me and so on. But that's a less lively impression because I'm not looking at my mom right now. It's confusing to me if I go to, I like taking videos. I've been taking videos for a long time. And if I go, let's see, I want my videos, so I'll go, so here, for example,
Oh, they're 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're all
So you could just barely hear, but that's my mom's voice. We were in my mom's house, and we're looking at the wild turkeys in the backyard. So I have some video of my mom, which I don't know why I've got, it's pretty weird, the things you get. That's my wife from the back, New Jersey turkeys. I kept trying to get pictures of them and so on. So, less lively ideas. Thoughts that we're having, say about David Hume's arguments. Is that lively? In his mind, the more lively are the things that we think of as, physically present. That's my interpretation of what he was saying. But all ideas are derived from impressions. So you don't get any ideas until you've started to have some sensory input. Now that, of course, is a challenge. How far back in our